Good morning. We're a Great Basin College survey team, and this is our presentation of our large-scale boundary topographic survey. Introductions, I'm Marcus Beagley. I was responsible for boundary resolution and field work. We had a couple gentlemen that were part of our team, Gus Porter and Michael Andriozzi. Gus was actually our team leader. Michael assisted in boundary resolution. Neither one were able to make it due to scheduling conflicts, and this is the rest of our team.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I'm from North Carolina. I worked on the project paper, the binder, and also the safety report.
Hello, I'm Alexandra Reed. I'm from Reno, Nevada. I worked on the drafting of the topographic map. I assisted in the safety report, and I did part of the preparation of our presentation.
Okay, so just a brief overview. Our team is kind of unique. Our school has an online program, so as you just heard, we're from all across the United States, making meeting times kind of difficult to schedule between full-time work schedules, 4 time zones, and our coursework as well. So that was one of our major challenges. We were able to overcome this, and we also had to split up the components of our project and kind of complete them individually, and then we used an online cloud service to kind of do document sharing so we could work collaboratively but still be away from one another. And that worked out well for us. We also really developed our communication skills, and we were able to relay information to one another thoroughly and concisely. We were all on really tight schedules, so this project was a good experience for us. Those who completed the field work were those who lived in Idaho. They also did most of the data processing, and then the rest of us did a lot of the paperwork. So this is our site. That island there, it's roughly 54.5 acres. It's called Jim Island. It's in Jim County, which is in western Idaho. Our particular site was that little 9-acre parcel down the left there. It's got a 1.7-acre pond on it. So for this project, we decided that Jim County, the municipality, would be our client, and they would be interested in developing that section of their island as a kayaking facility. Just because of the size of the pond, it wasn't sensible for whitewater rafting. So the pond would be kind of like a training area. You would get certified, and then you could go out into the Pyatt River, which surrounds our island, and bigger and better things. So that was the basis of our project. And also, if you can see down on the lower left of our site there, those lands are owned by the Idaho Department of Fish and Game. So part of the boundary would be acquiring those lands for Jim County so they could build their proposed facility. So in the end, our final product was to produce a base map that would aid in determining site suitability for the proposed project. Jim Island is zoned in the public district, so we thought finding a use compatible with that would aid in the development process, which is why we chose the kayaking facility. Permitted uses include boathouses and athletic sports complexes in the public zone, so that fits well. And then also, per Jim County ordinances, to acquire the lands of the Fish and Game, we would have to do a property boundary adjustment because no new parcel would be created and the site would still be within zoning compatibility with current zoning regulations. So the site, as you can see, it proved to be very interesting for us. It's an island, there's a pond, so we got to do a bathymetric survey as well, which was a good experience for everyone. There's also a few buildings, a concrete sidewalk, a paved road, and large trees that we had to locate. Okay, and then also, once we determined the scope of the work, we developed a safety plan to kind of aid us, kind of site specific. Our main concern was performing field work in Idaho in the wintertime, especially doing the bathymetric survey on the pond in the winter. so we were extra careful about that. And I think, oh, there were no underground utilities on our site, so we were safe there. And we located just a few power poles and above ground utilities with GPS.
So our work performed was primarily GPS work. We based our entire survey off of a control point that sits on top of a bluff, roughly half a mile away. It's a known control point throughout all of Jim County. We used a OPIS solution to determine our horizontal and vertical coordinate system. There were no NGS monuments in the area that were of good standing for us to check in with our coordinate system, so we had to hold our OPIS solution exclusively. As you can see, we had to improvise on what we were going to use as our boat, if you will, for our bathymetry survey. This pond is very small. It does not have a dock or a boat ramp of any sort, so we had to throw this paddle boat out there and attach our single beam echo sounder to it. Turned out to be quite a project. This is our record data that we based our survey off of. This shows the entire gym sports complex. We worked primarily in this area here, as you saw on our Google Earth overlay map. What we did, Richard Fisher, he's a LS here in Idaho. He had mapped all this out and based it off of this section corner common to sections 1 and 12 in Township 6 North, Range 2 West, and sections 6 and 7, Township 6 North, Range 1 West. This point was destroyed by the excavation done for the pond. So we had to reestablish this point. When we did our field work, we went and tied all 4 of these quarter corners in. We found these quarter corners based off point of perpetuation forms that had been filed with the county. We found that there was about 2/10 error on this east-west line and only 6/100 error on the north-south line. So we proportioned a single proportion for this section corner back from these 2 points and distributed the error amongst both lines, the north line and the south line. So once we established the section corner, from there we followed his description until we met a point roughly in this area where we created our new line calls to encompass the area that we wanted. We created about 8 new line calls and added that to our legal description. We also had the banks of the Payette River to deal with. So obviously we went through and tied the mean high water line and the actual edge of water. The mean high water line was determined based on vegetation and our best judgment on where high water would be in the peak water seasons. We went and did a thorough boundary search for any monumentation that Richard had shown. We believed all monuments had been destroyed by excavation in the area. The survey was done in 1995, and then a few years after that, they created this Gem Island Sports Complex and did major earthwork to the area. We did do a rotation to this east-west line that Richard also held for his basis of bearings. So it was determined after we did our rotation and our search that there would be no monuments found. We showed on our map that all monuments would have to be set again with a 5/8 rebar and a plastic survey cap. We determined that the high water line met pretty well with what Richard had on his survey, which in his narrative he showed being determined by the Department of Lands. So that fit in quite nicely. And then for our new line calls, we just, again, used our best guess as to what we thought the mean high water line was.
So once we'd established the boundary and collected the topographic points in the field. The points were processed and brought in and drafted in CAD. The line work was auto-drafted from codes that the field crew had used, and then they were checked and the line work was checked and refined by the drafter, which was mostly me, also Gus a little bit. We then created break lines and created surface contours using those break lines and ground elevation points. The tin was inspected, and once it was found to look pretty good, we made a few adjustments. We then had our surface contours. The bathymetry was processed the same way. The bathymetry was interesting because there were some really exciting points going super high and then some really low compared to the surrounding points. After double checking with the field crew that there weren't any obvious high or low features that they had seen, those points were then removed, which created a much more accurate and reasonable contour for the bottom of the pond. We then cleaned it up, made sure that all of the surface points were represented with symbols, and this produced an electronic drawing for delivery as well as a topographic map ready for printing. This was ready now to be delivered to the Gem County Engineer's Office for further use. The project results were that we were able to successfully retrace and close the boundary. Sufficient data was collected to accurately represent the site. We didn't have any major access problems that would prevent any data collection. The data was collected safely. Once it was drafted, the contours, site contours looked reasonable and seemed to accurately describe the site. The data was within NSPS topographic standards, so we were confident in delivering it to the client, and we were able to provide the Gem County engineers with a product that showed them the site would be suitable for development for a kayak park. Probably not for most other uses, but their intended use as a kayak park seemed quite feasible.
One other thing that we went through and found on our map is we did an extensive title report that was provided by Alliance Title in Idaho, which is in Gem County. The only two deeds that really were of any importance was obviously the Gem County Island Sports Complex, which we found no issues with, and then the Idaho Fish and Game lands. They were simply an adequate part showing a portion of the northeast corner of Government Lot 1. Once we established that section corner, mapping out that government lot, and then of course the Gem Island complex, which was monumented through the survey by Richard Fisher, we were able to, like I said before, create our new line calls that we were able to tie back in from his original survey. We looped it back through, tied into the north-south township line, and then again circle it back around to hit the north line of the government lot, and then tie it back to his original point of beginning.
And we had a lot of support in getting here, and we'd just like to thank the following people, particularly the Nevada Association of Land Surveyors, Carl C. DeBaca, and our advisor, Byron Hawkins.
Questions?
Questions from the judges?
Did you all find any FEMA flood data in the area?
Yes, we did. Did we have it listed on the map? It was in flood zone A2. I believe it was listed in our paper.
And what was your contour interval on your?
It was 5.
5 foot.
Is that major? What was your minor?
1 foot.
Your title report indicated a lot of easements. Did you guys make any attempt to
locate those, or?
From what we understood from that title report was that all those easements had been vacated as they were very old and they were for a, I believe it was a mill that was to the south, and there was also another factory to the south in the early 50s that those easements all pertain to. That mill is no longer there, nor the factory. So we made an assumption that all those easements had been vacated, as they, I believe that most of them were called out as a drainage, and I think it was actually a waste system that maybe perhaps they dumped into the river. So I would guess that at this point, those easements would not be allowed to be used, by EPA standards.
How many days of field work did you guys do?
We were out in the field for approximately 2.5 days. We had one full day and then a scattering of a few afternoons, 3-4 hours. The original topo and boundary work was done all in one day by 2 separate GPS units, one operated by myself and then the other by Gus Porter. Gus did the majority of the topo work while as I tied the boundary in and did the boundary search. And then we had one 4-hour stretch paddling around that pond with our echo sounder mapping that pond. And then another day was spent out tying the water's edge and the high water marks.
On your map, you make a reference to setting these property corners. Did you guys really do that?
No, sir.
That'd be a recommendation to the state if they did regress with development.
Yes.
How about your mean high water line? What did you use to reference? What was your definition?
We used what our best guess was where it looked like vegetation had been discolored by water in the area, so tree trunks, any other vegetation in the area almost has a white coloring to it, and that's where any high water sits, and then everything else obviously is, your browns and greens above that. Most of it was mapped out by the original survey, and he had his mean high water line called out, but where we created our new calls, that's how we fixed our high water line.
How did it compare to his?
It was very good. I would say plus or minus a foot, which was, I thought, very, very good considering it was 20 years old.
Any other questions from the judges? Questions from the audience?
Yeah, were you guys familiar with imagery before? Is that something some of you guys in the field have been doing?
We've done bathymetry on 2 other projects, so it was fairly new to us. It's a fairly simple process, really. It's simply watching the instructional videos to know how to set up your equipment correctly. One key thing is to make sure that you set your echo sounder below the hull of your boat, which is kind of tricky because in some of these areas that you're mapping, if you have underwater obstruction, you don't want to destroy your echo sounder. It's a rather expensive piece of equipment, but if you don't get it below the hull of your boat, it will reflect off the hull of the boat and give you incorrect data. But to answer your question, no, we weren't incredibly experienced in bathymetry, but it was something we had done a couple times.
And was that provided to you, the equipment, was that provided to you from the school or
No, actually, the firm that myself and Gus Porter worked for, we used all of the equipment from there. Like Jennifer said, she's from North Carolina, I'm from Idaho, Alex is from Nevada, so all the field work was performed by myself and Gus Porter because we had access to the equipment, and so it was kind of a difficult effort to involve everybody. Traveling wasn't feasible.
I would like to, getting back to that question, or actually the issue you just brought up, Great Basin is distance learning in a lot of respects. And so most of the work is done online, is that correct?
Correct. All of the work was done online.
But you're local, you're in the area?
Correct.
Okay. And so it's kind of like the coordination of the project. Were you the project coordinator then?
Actually, Gus Porter was our project coordinator, and he was unavailable to make it. He had that scheduling conflict.
And where was the drafting done, and what was used to do the drafting?
The
Civil
drafting-
3D, or what was it?
No, the drafting was done by me in Reno, Nevada, and we used a Carlson survey.
Okay.
And they also used Carlson Gus used Carlson in Idaho to touch up the drafting.
Thank you.
Yes.
You said that you used a single proportion. Was it on a township line, and that's why you chose that instead of a double?
Correct.
Okay.
Because it was on a township line, we had to use single proportion method.
What's the significance of the mean high water line? Is that considered the line for a riparian boundary in Idaho?
Correct. Whenever you're following a body of water, the mean high water line is what determines where your boundary actually is, regardless of call outs to like on this older survey, it shows a 1868 mean high water line. So as the years progress, obviously erosion happens, water lines change. And in the state of Idaho, and maybe in the entire United States, I'm not sure, the Department of Lands actually has to come out and physically mark out where the high water line is for it to be truly accurate. We didn't do this in this case, as I'd said. We just assumed where we thought the water line would be, and then where we had tied the water line, it matched in well with what Richard Fisher had on his original survey. But yes, the mean high water line is the determining boundary of any body of water in the state of Idaho. Thank you.